Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagan, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters in central Iowa. John Hendrickson and myself here today, ready to thrill and excite you. John's still scribbling notes.
Yes.
He's not ready, but we're going to put him on the spot anyway.
That's right, yeah.
I
wasn't
told him
ready.
to come prepared. We had a lengthy pre-production meeting. I'm ready to go with my scribbled notes, but you were not.
I was not, no.
Okay,
no.
Maybe it was the 5-minute warning I gave you that we're actually going to record that wasn't good enough. Okay. John, I'm not going to say it. We don't have a lot to cover today. We've got some things to cover today. We're going to get through it. Trivia.
Yes, yeah.
What do you got?
Yeah. Well,
let's start. Let's just cut right to the chase.
Yep.
What do you got for trivia today?
Question from last time was we were asking who was the political hero of Abraham Lincoln, and we had two people that got it right.
We had two winners?
Yep, and it was Henry Clay of Kentucky. And so the question I have this week is...
okay, go ahead.
I think our winners this week was our leader downstairs, Chris Ingstead, and then David Kerr.
Oh, okay, good.
Our listener,
wonderful,
longtime listener.
Wonderful.
And then question this week actually came from a project I'm working on. I think should be fairly easy, but we'll see. Who is the only person to serve both as president and as a justice on the Supreme Court?
I think I know this one.
So the only person to serve as both president and as a justice, or I should say chief justice, on the United States Supreme Court.
Early 20th century?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think I know who it is.
Yep.
Okay, I may have spoiled it. But anyway, either know it or you don't, right? Okay, well, good. All right, there you go, folks. Get after it. Housekeeping item that I'm not sure that, well, I guess maybe our folks do, but the filing period is open for candidates to actually file to get on the ballot actually this is for the primary election. But if you intend to be a partisan candidate, a Republican or Democrat, or even a no-party candidate, but you file your nomination papers with the Secretary of State's office and your affidavit of candidacy, and that gets you on the ballot. So anyway, that has started. I think that runs through March 20th, 23rd, somewhere in there. I'd have to look up the exact date, but that's when we actually know who's running and who's not. Not a lot of surprises yet. It's early on. I think the only congressional or statewide candidate that's filed was Zach Nunn. I think he was in there on day one. I will say this. For the congressionals and the statewides, it takes a lot of organizational work to get those signatures together and get on the ballot. So it seems that often there is one candidate somewhere for some office that held themselves out as I'm running, and they were unable to get the signatures and therefore don't make the ballot. So that may be my one thing to watch out for is who doesn't quite make it on the ballot. Anything else you're looking for? I know this is I kind of geek out on this stuff, John, and you don't as much, but
no, I'm always just interested on who decides to not seek another term and who might be some of the prospective candidates.
I think there will be legislators that maybe insiders thought weren't running again that decide to run again, and vice versa. I served 12 years in the legislature, and it's, that's a significant portion of your life. It's difficult to just finally say I'm done, but I think legislators generally know, but we'll be watching that. And you don't know for sure, actually, until the final day whether they're going to run a lot. Usually, leaders will really want those long-term incumbents to run. It's just easier. They usually have a pretty good established fundraising base in their districts, and so the preference for leadership is to get those folks on the ballot and running again. One thing I think to watch for as these start to come out is the number of primaries that are happening, both in the open seats. That's always interesting. But how many are running against incumbents this year? And I think there will be a a generous number of those this year. And then the second question is, are those well-funded, serious primary efforts, or are they not? And I think historically that would be more of an insurgent candidate running against a incumbent, because coming at from one of the wings of the party because the person had not been sufficiently conservative. I think you're going to see, maybe I'll just cut right to the chase on the issue of the carbon capture pipeline. I will think you'll see primaries on both sides of that. I think you will see some primaries of people because of where they were on that issue, yes or no, and you'll see incumbents being primary. And I'm not advocating for or against that at any level. But that's just something to watch for, is how many incumbents draw primaries this coming fall. So,
and we're seeing already some, at least at the congressional level, some people drop out on the Democrat side.
That's right.
We saw, and names escaping me, but one on the Senate side.
That's right. Yeah, it was the Nathan Sage?
Yes. Yeah. And then
former House Minority Leader Jennifer Conference, who just was appointed to a new
associate
role,
dean
at Drake University, which is a great job. So, congratulations to Representative Conference on that. Right, I think that's interesting, and maybe we should spend some time on that either today but the competitive primary that is shaping up for the U.S. Senate seat is interesting to watch, between Zach Walz and Josh Turek, Senator Zach Walz and Representative Josh Turek. It looks like, from my look, I'm not a Democrat Party insider, and I don't believe that you are either, John. It looks like the Chuck Schumer regime's preference would be for Josh Turek in that primary. If I'm wrong, correct me, please. But Senator Walz is running a pretty strong campaign, and I believe has a fundraising edge. And anyway, that's going to be a very robust primary that I could see being close on election day.
I think this morning he had a strong support letter in the Cedar Rapids Gazette from former Representative Dave Lobstack.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think Representative Lobstack is still well regarded, especially among base Democrats in that area. I used to live in that district, so it's interesting. I don't know what to make of it, but anytime you got a well-funded contestant like Republicans do for governor, it's hard to know because they're lower turnout affairs. It's only a certain segment of the electorate. I don't know. We'll watch it. I love it because I am a horse race.
Well, then you had,
junkie.
and this is terrible. I'm drawing a blank on another name, but you had the younger gentleman on the Democratic side. He was running in the primary for a congressional seat, and he now left that race. And now he's running for auditor. Yeah, and I can't think of his name.
Yeah,
but
I don't remember
but
either.
That was another development.
That's not uncommon. To see folks kind of take the off ramp from those federal offices, to maybe come down to a state legislative seat, which is probably a better place to start for a first time candidate. But it just depends on who you are. If you don't have it put together by this point, look for something else. So good. Well, we will definitely be covering that more coming up. A little bit of a roundup of what's going on. There was some conversation this week, especially in a subcommittee on the governor's property tax bill on TIF. And we have talked about TIF in the past, and I just wanted you to recap briefly, John, what is TIF and what is in the governor's bill, just so folks can kind of have that recap. And we don't mean to spend the whole episode on this, but just recap that for the folks.
Yeah, TIF again is stands for tax increment financing or urban renewal, as
it's inside the urban renewal section of the Iowa Code. Yes,
and I believe it originated in 1992 as a way to help renew kind of what they would refer to as brown areas or slum
brownfields, gray fields.
Blighted areas.
Maybe we could say it's an area that an ordinary development wouldn't take place on that land because of its current condition. It needed a boost to kind of get some new development back into it.
And so the taxes, the property taxes that would are then used to go for that development and for a certain time period. And so what the governor's bill does, and so over time, TIF in Iowa has really exploded. And I think we're over just under $5 billion and with TIF statewide.
That sounds about right.
I would have to look at that recent
We talked
report.
about that TIF report recently, yeah.
And basically, sometimes it has been abused. But what we're seeing, what the governor has proposed, is that there would be some guardrails on TIF. And so, for example, there would be like a timeline on TIF, and she is proposing a 20-year limit.
So the debt that you would issue, just to recap, you're talking about borrowing your debt. So the local government borrows money against however much the property taxes would increase as because of the development.
Yes, yep.
And so if you get an extra $10 because of the development, you can borrow against that $10 a year. So, but how long can you borrow it for? Typically you borrow your home for 30 years, maybe 15. I mean, there's probably other products, but a 30-year mortgage. The limit that the governor, there's no limit on it at all for TIF. You can borrow perpetual TIFs.
Yeah.
And the governor is saying 20 years would be the limit.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so that's the guideline on it that she is proposing. So it's a very kind of I would consider a mild reform to TIF, and it's nothing that would be considered radical, or it doesn't even come close to abolishing TIF but it's just putting up some guardrails and kind of bringing TIF back to what it should be within its original parameters, trying to restrain it a little bit.
Yeah, and then she also, it's this what you can use it for. So in current law, like you said, there's very few guardrails. Leave those debt obligations out for as long as you want. You can have a perpetual TIF, but you can also, these folks are giving it away in incentives to developers and all kinds of different projects. And the governor wants to restrain that to the actual infrastructure.
Yes, yeah.
Roads, utilities, those horizontal infrastructure sorts of things that you need, the platform for the economic growth. And that would then, as we understand it, John, that would preclude the incentives from going to the actual developer to boost the profitability of the project or whatever. That, we use the example, in these places like Waukee and Ankeny where growth's happening anyway. Does a developer really need a little shot in the arm? Those projects are happening anyway.
Yeah.
And so we like that. Along with the abuse, one that doesn't also get talked is on these TIF projects. What happens if the project fails? So you extend this, and we're seeing this in I think those are TIF projects in Johnston right now, but the developer just can't make it work. And now you've given the incentive out, but you don't have the project. I don't know if it's always that it's abuse or fraud. It's just giving money away on a project that wasn't ready for prime time. So that's a problem too. TIF needs reform. And any time that someone, our friend Tom Sands used to really advocate for TIF reform when he was in the legislature and tried year after year. But you always run up against that buzzsaw of local governments and their friends in the development community that resist any effort to tighten that up at all. And then we're seeing that play out this year. And we'll see, I know that Senator Dawson in that committee was strongly in favor. I mean, he set out that this was a critical piece for him that he wanted to do, and we'll see what happens. But there are a lot of folks in that room that don't want
there's
change the system.
There's a fear, and I think I'm pretty safe on saying this because I've served on local development boards and Chamber of Commerce organizations, and there's a fear that if you don't have these type of programs, that you're not going to grow your community.
Right.
And I just don't think that's. And for one thing, let's just set the record straight. No one's proposing that TIF goes away. But also,
Right.
they're basically saying that, well, we can't grow our economy unless you have government subsidies.
Yeah.
And
that's a mindset of that government is the source of growth, and government engineering those economic decisions and that economic activity is what's necessary. And that's just not the way we're wired,
No.
John. I mean, we believe that the free market will dictate that and will allocate capital, and those decisions we made without government tipping the scales on them. And certainly there's some projects around the state of Iowa that have been, like I said, we're not anti-TIF, that have been done and used and leveraged in ways that, are good projects. But all we're talking about is guardrails and making sure that it's done the right way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those proposals, again, as they move to the legend. But something to keep an eye on as you watch this property tax debate. And there was a lot more conversation in that room about these changes to TIF than there even was about the revenue limitations. So, we'll see where this goes. Okay. The other thing, and you had a piece on this, and we have not talked about this very much on the episode, John, and so I do want to spend a little bit of time on it, we've had different names for it, but a Budget Continuation Act, so that what happens in the case of a legislature, I guess, and the governor that cannot come to an agreement on the state budget before the end of the fiscal year, and what happens in that scenario. So you've written on it. Talk about what this proposal does, why it's necessary, and what it would solve.
So what this proposal would do is it would basically allow, if the legislature, for some reason, if there was a partisan disagreement, they could not pass a budget upon adjournment, that it would allow in a sense, a status quo budget to continue. And this, in a sense, almost happened with COVID. And this could happen not just because of a partisan issue, but it could happen because of an emergency.
They simply weren't in Des Moines to press the buttons.
Yeah, and we're actually seeing this. Obviously, we see this all the time happening with the federal government because of the broken budget process, and we're constantly going from one crisis from the next, and then. But even more so, we've seen just this past year a number of states actually go into overtime because they've been fighting over their budgets. Michigan was one of them. That took a long time to come to a compromise. North Carolina, believe it or not, is still fighting over their budget, and actually because they have a law, a budget continuation law. They're able to keep their government working and funded. And so just imagine if they didn't have that, what kind of disruption that would cause. Because even now they just, for various reasons, they can't come to an agreement on that budget. And so what this does is it provides stability. It makes sure that the essential services are funded, and that in a sense, it does not, the budget shouldn't be held hostage. Taxpayers shouldn't be held hostage over political infighting. And I think this is taxpayers deserve better, and I think this is just I would almost say this is almost a taxpayer protection as well, where it serves as in a sense a good government type of legislation.
And let's be clear that while this would be a good protection and a good structural change to the way we do budgets, it's not what we want to see happen. What we want is to see the legislature go in there, go through the process, comb through the budget, and pass what they need for the next year. And I've heard some people say, well, this sort of allows them to abdicate that responsibility. Well, I cynically can understand, the cynic in me can understand where that's coming from. But we see almost every year, there have been some extraordinary years, that the year over year the budget grows. And whether it's Republicans or Democrats, there's an insatiable appetite for more government, more of our dollars. And what it does is creates that the backstop, that status quo is where you start. And if you don't do anything, you don't get in, government doesn't grow. So you're starting from a premise that we will not have government growth unless the legislature wants to, and they probably will, and they'll probably decide. But we believe that is a good thing. And I believe that legislatures will still go in and do it. Look, the federal government still goes in as much spinning on autopilot they have. But you've seen how the federal government's approach to budgeting of shutdowns and brinksmanship and all that does not serve the citizens and the taxpayers well at all. And one thing that we haven't talked about, John, is, and it just kind of occurs to me, though, is you've seen in Washington, D.C., all too often there gets policy then attached to those deals. Yes. And I suppose the Obamacare subsidies, which was the big one in Washington, D.C., is sort of a budget item, but really goes back to that healthcare policy disaster that we have there in trying to. But you would see that creep into the process in Iowa, where you're going to see policy in those budgets. I so often fought against that, but it creep in more and more, and it having that backstop of a budget could help to fend off policy creeping its way into the budget.
I think that's right, and that's exactly what those situations have done. They've used that type of circumstance in order to get policy through, and so whether it's the Obamacare subsidies or in various states, they're disputing various policies, and I think when it comes to fiscal policy, you want stability. Mm-hmm. And that's a key thing, when it comes to tax and spending, you want stability, and I think too that a lot of you do see there's these disagreements at times, but I think that's even when you have divided government, it's still a rarity. I think you still see both sides coming to a compromise, and yes. I think in Iowa, you're still going to have disagreement, but I still think they're going to find a way to come to pass the budget.
The closest in my time that we came was in 2011. So you had that first midterm with Obama, and we were out. Democrat trifecta. We won. House Republicans come in with a big majority. Governor Branstad's in office, and Senate, and Democrats still control the state Senate. And that first year, we went all the way to June 30th, and that's the end of the fiscal year. We're hours away. Maybe it was the 20th, but literally hours away from the end of the fiscal year. Ultimately, we figured it out. And I still am a believer in Iowa, in the legislature. I don't think we're going to look at divided chambers anytime soon, but we work it out. There are people that still talk to each other to work things out, and I believe that'll happen. But the preference, the safeguard in place, just make sure that Iowa continues to work the way it ought to and not let these DC-style politics creep in. So,
and there's a lot of states that have this. So, I mean, this is not nothing that's that's new or something that's just been
just a good government structural reform, and that's it. I'm going to sort of tease this out, John. And so one of the things that we have talked about over the last several years here is regulatory reform. And there are a couple of fairly significant bills floating through the Capitol this year that do that. And we're not going to go into everything they do, but I just want you to tell people the term that we use, kind of the acronym for these, is REINS. And regulations in need of scrutiny. Is that what it is? Regulations in need of scrutiny. Well, that's got some traction this year, the REINS Act. Where's that at? Give me the elevator pitch on the REINS Act so that when we come back around and talk to this, we don't have to necessarily reset everything.
REINS Act is advancing in both houses of the legislature, but basically what this would do is it would provide greater oversight over regulations. And regulations sound boring, but they have a cost, and so they're sort of serve as a hidden tax. A lot of people just think they're rules, but rules have economic impact. And so what a REINS Act does is it does two things. One, it provides greater oversight of regulations, and it also, in a sense, reinforces what we would call checks and balances within the branches of government, between the legislative and executive branch. And, sometimes we would call it the bureaucracy. Today we call it maybe the administrative state.
Well,
so that the REINS Act would put, it adds an extra check on that, because a lot of times agencies make rules and there's sometimes they don't get,
right.
They just kind of go through.
From a philosophical standpoint, every decision of government is political, even if it's incredibly technical. And some of those things should be made by professionals that do it. We're not saying that we were anti-administrative or regulatory action, but this just adds another check and allows the legislature with a little bit more authority, a little more oversight and control over this process, because if all of those decisions by government, whether they be administrative or executive or whatever, that the voters and their representatives should have some control over that. And so that's what this does. Now, I guess you could say that, well, the governor and all that, but yes, let's have our elected officials, the legislature, having greater control over that process, because they're the ones that enabled that regulatory authority in the first place. And so it should continue to be on them to provide oversight of it. So that's the philosophy behind it. I think maybe in a future so we can go through what all is in there, because there's a lot of different components.
There
of
is,
those.
yeah.
I want to say it's another one of these 100-page type bills.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And then there's a bill that local government chairman Senator Scott Webster has put together that has some of these oversight kinds of things at the local level, which is a new concept that's floating through this year. And I know that you've been doing some work on that as well. So we'll be
a local REINS Act.
So it's all great. So I just wanted to tease that for the folks that we are tracking that. And we're going to spend a little time on that, and optimistic that we could get some really meaningful regulatory reform done this year. So anyway, anything else you got for us today?
I'll just highlight one other issue. It's not necessarily our issue, but we've been kind of following it, and it is important for the state because of just recent federal policy changes, and that's just improvements to public assistance oversight.
Oh yeah,
and so the Senate has passed one bill, and there's another bill moving through the House, and basically would make sure that there's improved, enhanced oversight on both SNAP, which is the food assistance, and Medicaid, because there's new federal guidelines and rules because of the One Big Beautiful Bill, and we need to make sure that there's the less error rate, the better. Otherwise, Iowa gets basically fined. So these are some, and plus you want less fraud anyways. Right. I mean, the objective of those programs is for the intended people to be served by them.
Those are important bills, and I expect to see those cross the finish line this year for sure. So we'll keep on track on that. So, well, very good. Thank you, John. That's all I got. Just a little Friday afternoon check-in on what's going on in the world, but we will be back to you presumably next week, and we'll cover some more of this and give you another update of what's going on. But with that, that's all we got for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. And with that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.